you wouldn't be here if you didn't already know that our focus since 2020 has been on creative opportunities, creative engagement with people with mental health problems, which has been a fascinating and fantastic journey for us. Part of what we've been doing, in addition to grant making, has been producing a series of resources, normally based on a series of case studies. And in that regard, Creatively Minded and Resourceful is no exception. What is an exception is previously all the resources that we've produced have been either about an art form or Creatively Minded in the art studio, or it's been about a part of the, so we've been encouraging greater participation. We've been concerned about if we can increase the number of artists of colour working in the field, and we've produced reports like this. This is different. So as a funder, one of the things I think about most is that how little money that we've got and how inadequate our resources are in supporting you, and the absolutely vast demand, and also the really, really tough time that lots of the sort of arts organisations that we're funding are experiencing. So we wanted to gather in all the wisdom, and we ran a competition because Mark Robinson told us we had to run a competition if we were going to give an authorship, and Mark Robinson was successful in that competition. So I'd like to hand over Mark, and also for the record to thank him for an absolutely fantastic piece of work that can be very, very helpful to you. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Let me just share. I'm going to share a few slides. So I'm going to say a little bit about the resource and explain some of the things that are in it and just some of the headline themes. And then we're going to hear from 2 of the 14 case studies. Jacqui Wood from ARC and Fenya Sharkey from Compass Community Arts are going to share a bit about their work, and I'll ask a couple of questions, and then there'll be a little bit of time at the end, which David will chair for questions of any of us, really, or thoughts. So I'll just share this presentation. So hopefully people can see on their screen a slide featuring a rather lovely cover by Dolly Sen. So thanks to Dolly, and yeah, just to start with, thanks to David and Harriet for making me a competition winner. And by competition, David means it was put out to tender. And I was very glad to do this, having worked with Bearing before. So I'm just going to share a few things. I could talk all day about this. It was a large, a really substantial and important piece of work for me. But I'm just going to share a bit of context first, if I can. And David alluded to this context, really. You know, why now? Why do a piece of work around resourcefulness now? Well, there's 2 sort of rivers that are emerging, I think, for me in this piece of work. The first is about the people who've been working in creative arts and mental health, and myself and Imogen Blood and Lorna Easterbrook, who I think is on the call in the meeting, had done an evaluation of Bearing's work in the last 5 years on this, and so we knew that there's an absolute mass of people doing really great work out there who've always already been resourceful. Most organizations in this work start from commitment, passion, practice, community before they start with funding. So that commitment comes before, and that's led to a kind of sector with very mixed models. Um, uh, Very few models, one is not the same as the next, but with a real mixture of earned and contributed income being from grants and funders. Um, uh, and that's both a positive place and a challenging place to be. But we know the world has started to add pressure in to that mix from stretched funding, all sorts of different sources, instability, rising costs, competition. Probably don't need to tell anybody on the call about those things. Sorry, just one second. I'm just trying to navigate my screens. So when we think about resources, that does lead to that, their grants are still important as stabilizers and enablers. And this work, I was very conscious that sometimes urgings to trade more, to earn more, can either be or be seen as implicitly suggested that grants are not important. And what I found confirmed the sense that grants are still important. They're stabilizers for people and they're enablers of activity, and indeed enablers of earned income, which often comes from trading, and that most powerfully flows from people's purpose, their practice, and their relationships. And people can leverage that to do more of what matters. So for me, as I got into this work, that was why that was really important, so that people can do more of what matters. So the report, which is up online now, shows some approaches and hopefully can inspire some imagination and action, a bit like in Dolly's cover image there. It includes a little bit of a typology about resources, to help people think about that, because there are so many different kinds of resources, and I'll explain a little bit about that in a second. There are 14 case studies that illustrate different aspects of resourcefulness, which was, to be honest, more than originally intended, but there were some great examples, and I know there's as well as Jacqui and Fenya, there are other people who helped and provided those case studies. So thank you to everybody who gave their time on those. So we expanded that in a way, but it also includes some ideas for using new resources, some starting points for thinking about this, depending on where you're starting from, and also because it's something that I like to do, is some tools to help with that thinking and planning. So that's what you'll find in the resource when you look at it, and I just urge you to have a look in. You can open it at any page almost, and I think you can then work your way around it. I identified 4 types of resources, and in a way, these are a kind of model, not a model this is what you should be, but just a model for thinking about it. But it is worth, before I explain it, just reminding ourselves that this is a quote that I like from he was a mathematician and a statistician, George Box. All models are wrong, but some are useful. A bit like the one in the illustration there. So it might not feel entirely accurate to everybody, but hopefully it gives a way of thinking about resources. So I identified, or I kind of split things up into 4 types. Probably the first one for me is the most fundamental, that people and their skills in your organizations, in the organizations working in this field, are in a way the primary resource before we even get to money and other things. That might be the creatives and their practices, might be volunteers, the peers, the staff, the boards of organizations, the people with lived experience of mental ill health who are either part of your organizations or advising or involved in other ways. For me, that's a really important thing, to not overlook those. Those do not necessarily show up on your balance sheets when you create those, but they're really, really important resources. Secondly, there's relationships, networks, and partnerships became really important, are clearly really important resources to the people that we did the case studies of, and the people who responded to the online survey that we did in the first stages of this. Thirdly, getting a bit harder here, physical resources might be are important to many organizations, whether that's spaces, buildings, venues, studios, or it's kit. It might be equipment, it might be a kiln, it might be digital assets, it might be merchandise that you're selling either on an ongoing basis, t-shirts, or it might be things for an auction. So we will have some physical resources perhaps. And then fourthly, income. The revenue streams that come either from funders or as earned income, and sometimes that can come from funders. Essentially, it's earned income if they're paying for your activity with other with third parties, with communities, or with people suffering from mental ill health, or they might become directly from the users, studio users, people who pay a fiver to come to your sessions every week. Those sorts of things can be a real range. And in the report, we developed a long list of the kinds of things, examples of each of those kinds of resources, that hopefully is a stimulus for you thinking about that when you're thinking about what you have got and what you could develop. It's not to say you should have resources in all of those areas. That will vary from organization to organization. There are some examples and ideas for using your resources, and many of these draw on the case studies. I'm not going to talk through these in detail here, but they're talking about who you are, where you are, and what you've got. That shapes many of these things. But if you look through that list, and there are 24, it might be that you want to develop contracts with NHS trusts or public health. It might be you could explore public personal health budgets. You could look at the case studies there. So hopefully this gives you a kind of practical way into thinking about some of those. As I mentioned, there are 14 case studies in the report. Just a few quotes in this slide here that give you a little flavour, if you can see those. Ruth Haldren from Choirs for Good in Wales said this one, which I've put on that page there. If you're really clear on your why, it's okay to treat it like a business. People are not in this sector are not by and large driven by dreams of turnovers or becoming trillionaires. They're driven by purpose and serving particular communities or people that they're working with. But to treat it like a business so that you can balance the books or make surpluses so that you can invest in your work in the future. That's one thing that Ruth was very, very clear on. For instance, there are two quotes on this slide which do point out one thing I want to say about the case studies. These case studies show a real range, and they don't all kind of agree with each other. In some ways, they show different ways of working for different organizations in different contexts. So one of those things might be about having your own space. Space 2 in Leeds has its own building, and Sarah was clear on the benefits of that. Mental Fight Club in London, I think Grace, I know, was planning to join us. I'm not sure I saw her name earlier, but hopefully she's here. Felt that wasn't something that they wanted to do, wanted to go in a different direction rather than managing buildings and becoming the expectation. So they show a real range. It's not that you should be taking any one or them all as your individual model, but there's loads and loads of great stuff in each of those case studies, I think. And then to support how you might think about those later, we've created some tools. So in the report, you'll see the whole thing, and you can download Word documents that you can edit on the Bearing Foundation website. This one that you can see on the slide there is a kind of adaptation of business model canvas kind of thinking, but centered on resources. So hopefully those will be useful to people who like to use those kinds of things. And then just a couple of final slides. I've also suggested 10 potential starting points. Things like becoming more intentional with your partnerships. Many people are in many partnerships, and if you really investigate those, they're not always necessarily delivering return in value of what you want to be doing, let alone money. So becoming a bit more intentional, piloting things, whether that's a pop-up space or it's a pilot, trying something out around charging. All of those kinds of things can really make a difference. But the big starting points, I suppose, are probably on this in this conclusion slide, illustrated by a show from Company Chameleon. This is resourcefulness can sometimes feel as if it's earning money no matter what you do to get it in. For me, this starts with doing what matters most to you. It's about starting where you are, using everything that you have, and it's keeping a firm hold of your why, and building on the quality of your practice and relationships. If you lose track of your why, then you can make decisions that can come and become more challenging as time goes on. The one final thing which I skipped over, I meant to say, and I do want to underline this, is that in trying to create these case studies and these sorts of lists and so on, the risk is that it becomes prescriptive, and that's certainly not my or the Bearing Foundation's intention. It's to be supportive, and neither is it to suggest that these things will fix everything. One of the things that I've said in the blog that David and Harriet have published today is, there are no silver bullets to this, and what helps at one point in time may not always help. There are a couple of interesting examples in the case studies where things have changed for organizations, and they've either had to stop doing things or chosen to stop doing things that worked previously because they weren't working as well, or have had to. So this is a dynamic and fluid kind of situation, resourcefulness, rather than a state that you attain and then can keep. But start with where you are and hold on to your why. For me, that's the takeaway from this piece of work, from talking to all the people I spoke to, that I hoped to pass on. That is very much a whistle-stop overview to give you hopefully encourage you to read the document. I'm going to stop there.
And I'm going to say, I'm sure we'd all like to thank Mark. That was a great presentation, and the report is just absolutely full of examples, which is what we hoped. If you do, I always think questions are a bit difficult when it's a large group of us. So if you don't mind putting some in the chat, if there's anything particular that you want to ask Mark. But we are now going to move on to Jacqui telling us about her work at ARC. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, David. Thanks. Let me just get my slides up as well. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. So yeah, my name's Jacqui Wood, and I'm the Chief Exec of ARC, which is Arts for Recovery in the Community. Obviously, ARC is much easier to trip off the tongue. It was great to be involved in this and to really look at how we define being resourceful and what matters to us. For me, being resourceful is about taking matters into our own hands. And the why of that is fairly obvious. I'm sure everybody is experiencing the pain of the current landscape. I've never written so many funding bids as I have done the last few months, and I've never had so many rejections from grants and charitable trusts. It's off the chart. It used to be about, you know, the relationship with funders, and I spent a lot of my time in those relationships and building those relationships, but it feels at the moment that it's very much a scattershot approach as well. We do have some key core funders, and I'm incredibly grateful for that, but we've had to look at how creative can we get with our response to the challenges of funding. So a little bit about us. We are an arts and mental health charity. We support adults, young people and families, and we're based in Greater Manchester. Primarily we work in Stockport. There's some blurb there about what we do, but basically it's very measurable, structured, time limited but progressive programs using the arts as our tool for adults and young people facing complex mental health issues. We gather our impact in terms of stats and baseline and endpoint evaluations. We have a lot of one-to-one meetings with individuals. We do case studies. So then we like to share our impact as summaries, which are mentioned at the end there. Our model really is one of a sort of stepped progression. So there's an entry level point that people come to us, and they are referred by a huge range of health professionals, including very active social prescribers in this area. But also we've noticed that in the last couple of years, we've probably got as many self-referrals as referrals. So our reputation and the kind of understanding and word of mouth is definitely having an impact. But this, of course, leads to a massive actual waiting list right now. We've got 200 people on the waiting list. That's over a year before we can actually support them. But that entry level is only the start. It leads to progressions such as volunteer pathways, follow-on programs, looking at independence, resilience, all sorts of skills, which we think is genuine progression. It feels very meaningful impact because it's tailored in a one-to-one approach. For us, it leads to great storytelling because you've got that narrative from people who whose personal story connects with our stakeholders. And it connects to our passion and our conviction, which is obvious to anybody who walks into our space. They get it straight away. So participants begin with our wellbeing programs and they build that kind of stability and social connection and creative skills through that. And then our wellbeing support worker talks to each person about what next. And for some people, it's returning to work. For some people, it's accessing a creative project in their local community or other services. And for some people, it is volunteering or our enterprise, or maybe doing a bit in the cafe, or just being involved with art, but in a different role. So that's kind of looking at transferable skills, teamwork, peer support in a very safe, supported session. So with these quotes, for me, kind of encapsulate that idea of it not just being somewhere where we hold people, it's somewhere that people come into and then hopefully feel some doors open, and it's almost the exit strategy is there right from the start. The quote in the top right, people feel safe here because they know I've been there too, and that helps my own mental health as well. So that's somebody who was a participant, went through our programs, and is a volunteer and leads one of our volunteer-led drop-in sessions on a Friday afternoon in our space. So people come there and they know that he's been through the same thing. So that's incredibly valuable as volunteering. Volunteering is a huge part of our story, a huge part of our offer. It's about participants, previous participants. It's about supporting volunteers who come to us because they've got lived experience of mental illness, or they are neurodivergent, or they have experienced all sorts of barriers to employment. They may have experienced forced migration. So those people don't necessarily all come through being participant, but they might gravitate towards us as an organisation, and we can offer them supported, safe real life work experiences through volunteering. The range of volunteer roles is massive, from being in our cafe, supporting all of our wellbeing programs. We have 2 volunteers alongside an artist in every program, representing us at events, running our public facing family engagement, so family art clubs, holiday art clubs, drop-ins in our centre. So it's marketing. Oh, there's a million things, which is why we were able to say that 106 people actively volunteered. Now, they may not have been doing it every week. It may be that they just do 1 session a month. But even so, it's a huge army of support. And when we, looked at the hours that they contributed and multiplied that by the real living wage, then we get to this incredible equivalent figure of what they've given to the organisation. So volunteering is key to our resourcefulness, but also we've had to look at how we grow our donors. Years ago, I've been involved in art for nearly 30 years, and I can easily say that we never used to ask for money. I don't know why it didn't occur to us, but it just didn't. Whereas now we articulate that ask at every possible turn. So the call to action on any of our social media posts will usually go back to, if you could donate this, or if your company can choose us for Charity of the Year, or any of those things. And then we try to explain the narrative, or explain the real thing that money could buy. So we've redone our fundraise for us and donate to us and all those sorts of pages on the website. So this is just a little screenshot of one of those. Trying to make it something that people can relate to, and trying to tell lots of individual stories. So that's been a piece of work we've looked at, we've invested our time in this year. Being much more overt in things like easy fundraising or corporate support. Easy fundraising is that thing where, a company, Amazon, although their percentage is tiny, but Amazon, lots of other companies, if you buy with them online, they'll donate a tiny percentage to charity. But actually, at the moment, that's raised a few £100, which we didn't have before. So there is some value in that. And then last year, we were celebrating 30 years of leading arts and health. The first 10 years, we were called something else, but then 20 years we've been ARC. So we used that kind of birthday campaign as the focus of a fundraising campaign. We set a 30k target. My finance manager said that, and honestly, I went, you are kidding. We've only ever raised probably 4 or 5 grand a year in donations. This is going to kill us. But we did get to the target within the 12 months. It was a mixture of corporate support. So a local company did pick us as Charity of the Year and did all sorts of events for us. A few others donated smaller amounts. We had community partners, local schools. 2 local schools did some big fundraisers for us, which was great because some of their young people had been to our programs, obviously gone back to the school and talked about it. And things like the Rotary, kind of getting in with Rotaries and WIs, top tip. We had individuals donating, and that included trustees, staff and volunteers who did their own fundraising events. And then we ran some fundraising events. So we've got a calendar of fundraising events that we now do. And a key point for us within this campaign, the thing that we really learned, was about the scheduling of different stories, so that we very clearly marked it out across the year and kept the storytelling varied. So we picked perspectives of participants, perhaps who've been involved 20 years ago, artists who'd worked with us and moved on to greater things, people who'd volunteered and got jobs and gone on. So we had loads of different points of view and current service users. So really looking at our key stakeholders and how could we bring all of those narratives together into one story. It was a huge team effort. It was tiring, and it was a lot of thinking all the time about how can we be innovative about this, but it was great. It got us all very, very motivated. It was a brilliant teamwork experience for us. We've pulled back a bit the last couple of months because we don't want to exhaust our donors, but we are going to be starting up again soon. Another key bit, just racing on, is our venue. So Stockport, you may have heard it referred to as the New Berlin, is Bobbins, but it has had an absolute resurgence. There's been a massive amount of regeneration, and investment in Stockport, investment in culture, a new library and an incredible service, investment in housing, in public realm, and it has changed how people in Stockport feel about themselves. So we've been very involved in that in terms of working on a cultural strategy a few years ago, which led to a successful bid for the Town of Culture, which fed into the regeneration. So we've played our part, and now I feel like we are reaping some rewards from that. We moved into our space in Hatworks, which is, you may have heard that Stockport has the only hat museum in the country. And got a big tower, a big chimney behind me out the back, which says Hat Museum on it, which you can spot from every train going past. But we moved here in 2019 when our previous venue was being sold and redeveloped by the landlord. And this has been an absolute game changer for us. We run the cafe, we have an exhibition space, so we showcase all the regular work, and we're able to put public events on in a way that we couldn't do in our previous setting. There are people coming in to look around the museum who then come into our space and discover us by accident, which is great. So we have volunteers able to talk to people who just wander in. We're on a main road. We're not in the shopping centre, which is, so we don't get all the traffic, but so much more visible than the industrial estate that we were on before, where nobody could ever find us. So really, we've got things here that just wouldn't have been an option in any other venue. We're connected to culture and heritage. And it has made a massive difference. Obviously, we pay rent, and we have to work with the museum and co-program with them, which is great. And it's not without its issues. But I feel that we've brought value to this space. We've animated this building in a way that it really wasn't ever as well used before. Last year, not just us, but with the museum as well, I think there were 20,000 visitors, people that came in for different things. So we've helped our partners at the council, and being here has massively helped us. As I mentioned, we run a cafe, and it's a core part of our volunteering offer. So obviously we've got people who've been through our programs, but also this is where a lot of external volunteers find us. Young people who might want to be gaining experience in hospitality, but need a lot of support. They may have struggled with finding work. They may have struggled in education. And here it is a real world environment. It can get busy, but it's also, we know how to support people and try to make it responsive to their needs and less pressured than going and getting a job at Costa. And a lot of people, a third, I've got a note here that a third of our cafe volunteers last year progressed into employment, education or training. And it changes the way people feel about themselves. We've got a number who we get very reliant on, and then they go and get really good and get a job. But it just shows that kind of training opportunity, it still connects massively with our core values and about mental health and opportunity and breaking stigma and giving people opportunities. But it also helps to earn income for the charity. And then finally, the other bit we're looking at is retail enterprise. We're kind of thinking, last year we did a big focus on our cafe work, and we invested a lot of time and thought in that. And we want to do the same for our retail area. So at the moment we have something called Creative Enterprise, which is a follow-on program for people who've been through our entry-level work. And it's for people who might want to develop design skills, marketing. They may want to have their own stall. The picture here is one of our handmade events. We had one this weekend. So those stalls are a mixture of professional artists and people who've been through our programs, who've built up a body of work and then can look at that as their own enterprise. So some of the work we make in enterprise is goes directly into the ARC shop and is about fundraising, and people find that incredibly valuable because they're thinking that the money that is raised from those sales goes straight back into providing help for people like them. So it feels right, and again aligns completely with our values. But also it's about giving people the skills and mentoring and opportunity to maybe have a different career or to step outside and do something new as the next stage of their life. So yeah, there's I don't know if I put that. Oh yeah, that was it. The quote there. We do look at services and commissions, and I guess this goes back to Mark's point about key partnerships. So the photos here are actually all from projects we've done in the last year or so with businesses. So we offer away days, we offer team wellbeing activities. And we've been developing that, looking at employee wellbeing, because that is, again, can directly link back to our core values. We want people to be well enough to stay in work and to have a positive experience and to be, mentally healthy, whether they come to us as participants later or not. That there's still a reason for us to work with them. So this is just some examples of ways that we're developing that workplace wellbeing offer. It's very difficult. We're still seen as fluffy, arty-farty nonsense. Why would I pay for that when I could, I don't know, go bowling for an afternoon with my team, or buy counselling in for those people that are struggling? But we're getting there. It is worth investing in that. However, my cautionary tale is around trying to develop and trying to respond to every possible opportunity for either partnership or service, and it's not always appropriate. So because we're in this fantastic venue, and we have loads of families coming in and taking part in activities, we do frequently get asked about children's birthday parties or hen do's. Now, at a push, we could potentially do that, but that would mean staff working additional time away from the things that we're actually meant to be doing. And I can't quite join that up, apart from we could make some money from it. So those things don't quite work. We previously had social work students on placement, and for a number of years it worked really, really well. We would get a fee to take a student on a 70 or 90-day placement. They would offer a lot of the advocacy and wellbeing support to our participants, and it worked very well. But our model changed, and the aligning the needs of the university and the students with our model became increasingly hard. So a couple of years ago, we made the decision to stop doing it, which has been really difficult because obviously we've lost that income, but it didn't work. And we probably let it go on for a few months too many before stopping it. It was when I realised that it was a risk.
Amazing. You also are just a tad afraid. Are you coming towards the end of the remarks?
Yes, yeah, this is my last slide. Yeah. So yeah, I would say just be careful about what you either say yes to for the money, and make sure it genuinely works for you.
That was amazing. I do hope that lots of Berliners are going around saying, I mean, we really think of ourselves as the Stockport of Germany.
Absolutely. I honestly, I don't know. I think it was a really bizarre thing to say. It really is nothing like Berlin.
And the only thing that I'll mention is that no one on this call, not even Jacqui, knows you're actually the reason for this report.
Oh.
Because I came to see you in probably 2019.
Just when we just moved in.
Yeah, and I got very, very happy memories. And then I went away thinking, there's so many amazing ideas that you've got that somehow we're going to have to, and not everyone will have had all those amazing ideas, and somehow we need to gather them up and spread them, because in lots of ways, one of the things about arts and mental health for us is you're not really in competition with each other. By and large, you're geographically separated. So you're in competition normally for grant makers, but not for local resources. So you can share those wonderful ideas. So many, many thanks for those fantastic ideas. Fenya, you've got to be as brilliant as Jacqui, but actually keep to time on mention. Thank you. Now, where has Fenya gone? Fenya, would you like to start your... There you are. Would you like to start your presentation? You're on mute at the moment.
Thank you, David.
There we are. Perfect.
Just trying to share my screen now. Thank you. So let's bring up. Right, so can everybody see that slide?
I mean, I
Oops.
can't. It's odd because it was working before when you tested it, wasn't it?
It was,
Can other
wasn't it?
people see it? Harriet, can you see it?
No,
I
we can
can't
see
see
your
it.
Teams
No.
window, Fenya.
Ah, that's unfortunate, isn't it? Let me come back. Well, I apologise for this. At the moment, I'm struggling to come back to you. Let's see what's happening. This is the problem with having so many projects on the go and so many different windows. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Right. Let me try again. Screen. Share window. Share slides. Share. Slideshow from beginning. How is that?
Yes, we can see. That's perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good. Well, patience is a virtue, isn't it? Thank you, everybody. I particularly wanted to share this image of Compass. This was taken a year ago, and what you're going to hear is quite a different presentation around resourcefulness, because we actually, in 2013, we actually found ourselves in a position where we were thinking we may have to close because of funding cuts back then and a sudden massive drop in our income. But I had just become director of Compass, and I was particularly interested in how you design a charitable organization and embed sustainability so that you're not so dependent on income and grants. The community that we work with, this has been about a 12-year project now. We work very, very closely with mental health services and community services, and especially the crisis service. So most of the people coming into Compass will have not only be recovering from crisis, but they will have been through several cycles of crisis. And the question was there somewhere that they could go to where that cycle of repeated crisis may actually, plateau and they would feel safe? So this image is quite interesting to me, because on the left, you've got a circle of people who are a peer-led group that have called themselves the Free International University. And 3 of those peers at the table, one actually took 6 years to walk through the door of the project. Another one, through word of mouth, knocked on my door on Christmas Eve, absolutely desperate and terrified that he was going to become street homeless because paranoia had grown to such an extent post-COVID. And the third person at that table has gone through, came over to the UK on their own at 16 from the Caribbean, and again became homeless, and had complex issues around mental health and physical health. And now they're not only delivering at campus, but they also recently applied for an NIHR Grassroots Award to become a researcher within campus. Now, I don't think looking at that table that you would particularly be able to pick out the people that I've just described. And that is a huge clue to what we are aiming for at campus. Everybody else has come to join in and a participant in one of our public outreach events. And the other story, which is really beautiful, is the lady on the right was actually at the time under the acute services, and in order for her to remain safe, she had the idea that she wanted to offer hand massage, and she did that for 5 days in this setting, which is a pop-up studio. And at the end of the 5 days, it was considered that she'd actually come through her crisis and was able to stabilize. And that was really very much because she had the autonomy and the opportunity to focus on what she could give and interact with the public, who greatly appreciated her talents. So even though we're known for our exhibitions, and currently we have 3 exhibitions, and we're known for the standard of our exhibitions, I think this image for me really encapsulates the way in which we flex in order to work with the community that comes to meet us, and also how that community can provide such value to the wider community of Eastbourne, where we're based. So we have about 60 to 70 people that are engaging every week across a year-round programme. And as I say, it's the peer-led work that we are particularly excited by that has developed over the last 13 years. The question, as I said, was that I wanted to see if you can embed sustainability into the organisation. And the first thing that we looked at was how could we work with reciprocal relationships across the town, where people had sites or assets whereby they would be happy for us to have permanent spaces, studio spaces, and for our overheads, electricity, heating, internet, the furniture, the kitchen facilities to be all included in exchange for the creative contributions that the community that we were receiving could give back. And that led to an annual calendar of events. And the organisations that have supported us, and there have been several over the years, they've seen that there is social value that they gain and can use in their funding applications, but at the same time, they find there's an enriching experience with engaging with our artists. So we've always worked for the last 13 years with what already exists. And what has emerged is a very simple principle. Wherever possible, we use our creativity and we put on events. And our trade is our relationship, our creativity and our relationship, rather than the monetary value. So through this process, it's completely changed how the community around campus thinks about the participants that are referred to us. And instead of seeing people as recipients of care, we have begun to, or we haven't begun to, for the last 10 years, we've been involved with a genuine collaboration with the community. And that shift changed everything. So slowly, one by one, people began taking responsibility not only for the organisation, but also for each other, which was a genuine shift. It didn't work. It wasn't an immediate transformation. This has taken years, and trust had to grow. And not only trust, but confidence within the community had to grow, and their relationships. But gradually people have arrived who once were seeking support, and they've begun to help by sustaining the very community that is there to support them. Now, in all of this story, what has surprised me the most is that as people became more confident and connected and responsible for each other, and giving as much as they have been giving to the organisation, we've been able to expand exponentially, because we've been able to facilitate that they actually lead on the delivery of the sessions, and we see ourselves now as curators of the outcomes. But they've become more resilient, and this has been really noted by the mental health services, who are very interested in how that resilience has been established. But as they've become more resilient, the interesting thing is that the organisation itself has become more resilient. And the resilience of the organisation has turned out to be a consequence of recognising and investing in the capacity of the community to contribute. The people we worked with were often and clearly described as vulnerable. But what Compass has discovered, that vulnerability and contribution are not opposites. So for me, resourcefulness is not simply about doing more with less. It's about recognizing forms of value that already exist within people, relationships, and their communities, and creating the conditions in which those resources can flourish. And the beautiful thing about the FIU, who are in this image here, there are more members of the FIU, but in 2022, they turned around and they said, we can see that by having focused on arts practice and being given access to these studios, that we have been engaged in a form of subjective research. We've learnt more about ourselves than we could have imagined. Now, if we come together and we collaborate together with this organisation, can we become researchers and bring about social change to better understand the lived experience of severe mental illness? That's where we currently stand. And I'm sort of offering a question, really, in order to be able to have this conversation, which is perhaps sustainability is not achieved by protecting organisations from uncertainty. Perhaps it emerges when communities are recognised, not simply for their needs, but for their capacity to contribute. Thank you very much.
With my screen there. That was a very, very beautiful presentation. Many thanks, and both contrast but also continuities between the two. We are coming towards an end, I'm afraid, and I always think the questions bit's rather difficult with a large group. If there was someone that had a burning question, I'd suggest take yourself off mute and just give it a go. Do you think that it's very hard to get discussions going in a group like this? What I suggest I do is that I thank contributors. These are absolutely fantastic. It's a marvelous resource. I think those are two amazing about what is possible. This is a form of therapy for me and my worries about of the Bearing Foundation against what needs to be done. So thank you for helping with my therapy. You will find many more case studies, of course, in the report. We want to continue to play our part, so the foundation is going to continue to fund in this area until at least the end of this decade. We have funding partnerships, we're delighted to say, with about 6 other funds, the arts. I'm delighted that Dan's with us from the Arts Council, partnerships with all the arts councils, and also we're working with the Arts Council to create new posts in all the integrated in England in an effort to try and improve commissioning and getting more resource flowing. But as you've seen from this presentation, there are many, many other things that could be done. So I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. I think it's been an amazing hour, and obviously Jacqui inspiring me in 2019, I think was ended up being a good thing. So thank you all very much for joining us, and thank you to Harriet for organising it. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.